conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said. And what I said, I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it. But it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
I don't know about the end of that song, guys. It's just a little conversation. It's becoming a lot more a little conversation. Me and Dave before the show were reading comments, and it's like I don't know what's happening. I asked Dave, what do you have to do to be likable these days? If you're smarter than someone, they don't like you. If you got more money than you, do I have to be a broke moron to be likable? And I'm not talking about me personally. It's just you watch certain people talk, and if they say a word that's too big, they get called all sorts of names. It's just amazing to me. I watched Neil deGrasse Tyson the other day talking, and people were just attacking because he was talking about the sun. Like, this guy is so full of himself. Why? Because he's giving you knowledge about how the sun works. It is just like, what is happening? So, anyway, welcome everybody to the conversation with Harold and Dave. I'm glad some of you are already on the live watching. Today, we're going to talk about our favorite person to talk about. That's the president-in-chief, Donald Trump, talking about the tariffs. And before
there
we
used to be
even
a time
start,
when you cringed when I mentioned him. There used to be a time.
there used to be a time. Now it's like that trauma you went through that it was hard to talk to the psychologist, and now you can just tell some random stranger at Walmart your story, without it harming you. But let's just get right into some video. Let's just start right there, okay? Because these type of videos are hilarious to me.
I got you down as a Trump guy, Dave. Are you? Are you prepared to say how you are? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm voting for Trump. I'm down 7.
FAFO.
I just had to stop it there because I just love the transition for, I'm voting for Trump. I'm down $7 million. Let's just keep it rolling.
And stocks and crypto. Trump has put his tariffs all over the place. I've been trying to understand them. I don't. And everything's in the shitter because of it.
People are getting killed. Me too.
Yeah, we all are.
You look at your shit?
Bro, holy it's so bad.
Nah, I mean, that's... How much you lost? Be honest.
8 figures. That's almost...
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, you over here like, Kamala, come back to me.
No, DJ Academics. Don't ask for it now. Remember, it was the worst thing that could happen to America. Don't ask for it now.
You over here singing the song like the Kanye Bianca song.
It's bad. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro.
I'm voting for Donald Trump in November. I've said.
Now, here's the kicker. There's the kicker. Wait till you hear what Ben Shapiro says. I almost fell out my chair. I thought it was snowing in April in North Carolina.
And hear him over those eyebrows.
So many times at this point. But I'm not just voting for Donald Trump. Next week, I will be co-hosting a fundraiser for him. One of the biggest tax increases on American consumers in the history of America. And it's going to cost American consumers. It will cost American producers who use inputs from other countries. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted immediately more than 1,000 points. The S&P 500 plummeted more than 3%. The NASDAQ plummeted almost 4.5%. There are real world implications for this sort of stuff. Trade wars are in fact not good and not easy to win, particularly if you don't actually have a plan.
Who could have told them that?
Well, you two idiots did. And you were called morons, lefties, liberals.
Every textbook in economics you opened would have told you that. And who called them his tariff plan a sales tax on consumers?
Come on.
God, how are we supposed to pronounce it? Like, I've forgotten already. Kamala, right? I mean, but I mean, a tuna sandwich would be a better president, right? So, but it because you wouldn't do this stuff, right? I mean, there's this thing. It's like, um, all of these things, by the way, perfectly predictable, predicted by every economist. I mean, it's just we've studied this stuff. We know how it works, and just at all times, it's like a tariff is a tax. You don't make things cheaper by taxing them, right? And
If
so
you
many.
tax
And
someone,
you definitely don't make things cheaper by increasing it every time you get mad at the other people.
it how like that guy says, I don't understand it. Okay, look, tariffs, I get it. There's a lot to read about it, but you can simplify it. If Harold's selling me something and I tax him for it, he's going to sell it at a higher price so he can make more money.
Well,
So
not
now,
even making money, just at
when I,
least,
when I
giving
sell it, it's going to
negating the
cost
tariff.
more money. Huh?
I said, not even necessarily to make an additional profit, just to negate the tariff to avoid any losses.
Well, yeah, but what I'm getting to is, and then when I turn around and sell it, the consumer is the one that's hurt,
Right.
not
Yeah.
the company that's selling it. Well, now it's backfiring because now all of these companies that endorsed him and gave money, Amazon is complaining now, Facebook is complaining now, Apple
Mm.
is complaining now.
Mm.
Where do Apples get their phones from?
A lot of people supported Trump, hoping he wouldn't. It was a selective. The hope that he would selectively not do things,
Yeah.
right? The belief that he was going to talk tariffs and then not do it because his advisors would talk him out of it, or that he's going to deport some people and not others, and that he's, just at every step along the way. And in the end, you know, one guy you were reading about who was, just so, but he was saying Trump does what he says, and to a certain extent, you have to say that in this administration, they are delivering on Project 2025. They are delivering on just every harebrained idea that Trump has. They're doing everything he says. Like Canada's the 51st state. He jokes about it, and it becomes a thing they push. So he's doing everything he said. And the problem is that so much of what he said was contradictory or just bad, just a bad idea. Um, and so and Ben Shapiro, his criticisms of Trump were just dead on, right? It's like how does this work? And even if you think tariffs might work, you have to use them in a coherent fashion. You can't say I'm putting tariffs on to encourage businesses to reshore their manufacturing, but I'm going to take them off if they come and make a deal with me. And oh well, I'm going to pause them. I mean, you're just totally all over the place. You tariff your closest allies and then say, oh, but we want to form a coalition with our allies against China. That's been the latest argument. And it's the utter incoherence of that there's just no way to to rationalize it, right? There's no way to rationalize it because anytime you try to explain how it might be working, it contradicts very, not minor statements. It contradicts an equal portion of what the guy says. He's equally saying he's putting incentives for manufacturing to come back to the United States, equally saying he's negotiating deals and they're going to walk them back. And, none of this makes any sense.
Well,
Harold,
one of my issues is it's almost like I'm thinking about a football team or a sports team. 8 years ago, he ran the same play with no success. So why would you 8 years later think the same play would work today when things are much more intricate, much more, I guess you could say, connected as it looks from an economic standpoint? If tariffs didn't work during his first term, Why would you even go with that notion and support him the second term? And now it's much worse than it was the first term.
He
The first
wasn't.
term, yeah, you heard a certain number of industries, like the farming industry, where China decided, okay, you're going to tariff us, we'll buy $1 billion in wheat or whatever, soybeans or whatever, from Russia. So now we just helped their economy, but our farmers then end up getting a bailout, sadly, and that didn't benefit all farmers. It mainly benefited the major farmers. But I'll land my plane there.
This never happens. Normally, a president loses re-election, and you never hear from them again. There's only been one president to serve a term, not serve the next term, and then serve again. And that president went back to back, took a term off, and then went back to back. We all know what I'm talking about. Normally, when you lose the re-election, we don't hear from you again. 4 years later, you become forgotten. I've never seen this before, and there were no lessons learned from the first term.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
like I said, we're running the same place.
The essence of the Tea Party into MAGA movement is victimization. And I think one reason that I think in the end, Trump's appeal was always about being victimized by dangerous others, by, people you hate. And that survived, that thinking really played. He denied winning, and he was able to string it on for 4 years. And and so it in a way that kind of makes sense that he did it. But when we look at these tariff plans, there's another aspect to this. Things that come up that people are throwing out. One, I've said the idea of Humpty Dumpty, right? Or unringing a bell. You've violated, you've torn apart the Western world. You've convinced your allies. You've united Canada against us.
Along with
how do you unring that bell? It's Humpty Dumpty. You can't be put back together again. When it comes to tariffs, right? Trump is saying, "Oh, we're now going into we're gonna negotiate with these guys to get and he's going to negotiate with like every country in the world." Do you know what the average tariff rate on U.S. products to the EU was in 2023? Probably not. Would it surprise you to hear it was 1.35%?
Oh, God.
Actually lower than the U.S. tariff rate on EU products of 1.47%, I believe it was. And, but these are virtually no tariffs. So the next meme I'm going to throw out at you is Super Troopers. Pull over to the side. We've already pulled over to the side, right? So lower your tariffs. We've already lowered our tariffs. And, ironically, one of the things that we might have claimed was a non-tariff barrier in Europe was their ban on artificial food dyes, because that and bans on GMO products we've actually been fighting with Europe under previous administrations over their bans on non-GMO stuff, because that's a non-tariff, what they call a non-tariff barrier, or it could be. It could also be that Europeans just genuinely are concerned about genetically modified food and don't want that shit in their country. But those are the kinds of regulations that are non-tariff barriers tends to be something that's put on the books for some reason, like the health and safety of the population, or protection from diseases, whatever. And the idea is that, well, that's not the real reason. The real reason is to prevent you from competing with it. And, so those things might exist, but how do you negotiate those quickly? Right. That's kind of the reason we set up the World Trade Organization, was they're really hard to negotiate. When we were negotiating the generalized agreement on tariffs, right? The first one we did kind of right away. Then, it took a couple of years, and then 3 years. Every round that we did took longer and longer, until the last round was 8 years of negotiation. 8 years. Because as you get as you get pulled over farther and farther, it's harder to negotiate pulling over even a little, you don't have any room. And so it becomes really difficult and you end up dealing with issues that are complex. And, just what are these folks supposed to call up and negotiate? Right? They aren't actually tariffing, not nearly. And you put up these numbers that are fantasies that have nothing to do with what their tariff rates are, and you claim they've got tariffs of like 39%, when in fact they have a tariff of 1.35% on average. And now what are they going to negotiate? And then what are you going to claim victory for getting rid of? Right? I mean, what the hell? And so this is where we are. Well, and now we're worrying about whether Xi Jinping is going to call Trump. Right? Trump's at this level of, well, he has to call us. And Xi Jinping's like, no, I don't. I don't have to do this. I prepared for this. Because the other thing, what Harold was saying, it didn't work 8 years ago, and guess what? Or even 4 years ago, right? Since COVID, China has been getting ready to be tariffed by the United States. They've been ready for a tariff war because they recognize their weakness, and they've developed alternate suppliers for everything that we sell them. They've gotten their industries ready, and so they are now loaded for bear. And they're like, if you want to fight, we'll fight. We ain't calling. And so they're coming at it from a position of strength, all the while to the rest of the world fighting on the right side of history, right? We have ceded the international economic moral high ground to China, and they know it. They've commented on it.
Think about
And
that.
so,
Hold on.
what?
That comment, you just can't say it and we just brush by it. Think about what you just said. And then when I say think, I don't mean you, Dave. I'm talking to people that listen. Think about say that again. We have succeeded what?
We have ceded the economic moral high ground, right? In terms of running the world according to free trade, to the principles of all the international organizations that were collectively set up at the end of World War II. China is acting in the way that those organizations want them to act. And by the way, they have a history of doing it. To people that know, during the Great Recession, China came in and acted in concert with the nations of the world to stamp out, to deal with that crisis. And a lot of people were kind of surprised that they showed up, and they were a good partner. So now other nations economically are looking at China like, all right, I mean, and they're the supposedly communist country, right?
Yeah, don't say that, Dave. You already know what's going to happen. I got to make sure mine doesn't. I got to make sure the short doesn't end right there when I do it. Well, Harold, comment on this. I voted for you, but midterms are flying out the door. Your actions destroy our hopes, plans to retire anytime soon. For God's sake, why decimate everything at one time? It will take years to recover our retirement accounts, but it took you 3 months to destroy them.
Well, that's what I said during the first term. When we had the stock market crash due to his mismanagement or mishandling of the, COVID crisis or pandemic, because, my retirement account took a hit and the stock market lost over 33 percentage points. When you drop from 29,000 or 29K to 18K, that's a significant drop. That's more than 33%. And the fact is if you saw it in action before, why would you support him the next time? It took me 3 years to recoup what I lost at that time. And that recoupment took place during the Biden administration. And this is the message that I've been, basically telling everyone who's out there. Understand the dangers of the policies, because now with what's happening, I don't see an end in sight. And what we saw recently, a few weeks ago, we saw market manipulation, where I can announce tariffs, market goes down. And then on a key day where I'm telling everybody, hey, maybe they should buy, all of a sudden you announce that you're gonna pause the tariffs for
Yeah,
30
he
days or 90 days or whatever it was.
like with tariffs for some reason. I
But
don't know if you
but my
remember
thing is that's market manipulation.
that.
It is illegal. It's the same thing. It's called insider trading. I think some lady named Margaret, what was that her name?
Martha
That got
Stewart.
Martha
yeah,
Stewart.
Martha. I'm sorry, Martha. That basically was arrested
Okay.
for that, imprisoned for that. But
I do
yet
have
we can do it in the White House.
I do
Dave,
have to
is
push
that
back
what's
a little bit on the insider trading line in that in your own words, you said he told everyone it's a good time to buy stocks.
Well,
And the fact
no, he didn't say specifically stock. He just said it's a good time to buy.
he said it's a good time to buy, right? That's your insider information.
Well, he knew what he was going to do. They remember
Right.
even after that happened. There's a video that's circulating of him talking to several billionaires in the White House about how they made out. One made over $1 billion, and the other
Right.
one made over 900 million. So he's giving them insight into what he's getting ready to do, which
No,
is manipulate.
that was the day after that bounce.
Right.
And there
Exactly.
are a couple things just I gotta say.
Say it.
One, if he tells everybody it's a good time to buy, that's it can't be insider trading because everyone had that information. And in fact, if you're a president and you know you're about to say something very positive, giving forewarning of it might be considered a smart thing to do, right? And when talking to the guys in the room, um, they made money because they owned stocks that went up. They didn't necessarily trade off of that information. You have to show that somebody made a specific trade. And a lot of the guys he was talking to, he was talking about how their market value went up because the stock market, the Dow went up 2000. What
Mhm.
I found
I get
was
it.
bizarre about that though is he's telling these guys, "Oh, you made this money." And in there I'm imagining them thinking, "Right." Like one guy said made $2 million. And it's like,
No, 2
"Right."
billion.
Or 2 billion, right after our stock had gone down 6 billion from a week earlier. And I saw those guys, and my subtext to that was these guys are like, we're having to say thank you, sir, for having a 2,000 increase after a 6,000 decrease, and you're taking credit for it. And so I react negatively to that, but I reacted a different way of clueless, just clueless, saying they made money because of his bounce when in fact, it was in relationship to they'd already lost more. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be a stick in the mud
No,
on that, but
no worries, bro. I mean, that's just
everyone
a perspective that I didn't view it from.
yeah.
That's all.
But now, did he text more specific information to anybody, or did anyone in his administration know more than that text or that truth social? Now we got insider trading and they get to go to jail. And
Not under this administration.
yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah, well, the statute of limitations, the SEC has a long memory. They also have the data. I mean, the thing is, you can't do that shit without it being recorded. And yeah,
Well, we don't know what they're going to take to Mar-a-Lago when they leave this next time. So they may take all the data.
Do you know how much money Apple lost during this whole starting, stopping, pausing tariff fiasco?
You mean a company that's valued at over what trillion, $1 trillion, maybe $2 trillion?
Yeah, but
What they was?
who have a lot of
What they?
money. They don't care if they're worth $100 trillion. If they lose $1 million, they get upset. $39.5 billion. $39.5 billion. Dave, trying
That's
inspired.
all.
Huh?
I said that's all.
Mr. President, I enthusiastically voted for you, but you are failing baby boomers with your constant flip flopping on tariffs. Collectively today, Those who are either retired or planning to will lose billions of dollars in their retirement accounts. People are
Duh.
really, people are really. Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
No, what?
No, I thought you said something.
Carry
No,
on.
that was me. I said, duh.
Here's another one of my favorites that I saw online. Recall the tariffs. You cost me over $3,200 in my retirement accounts Friday, and I voted for you 3 times. You're killing us.
And he expected different. He killed them the first time, but he didn't, they didn't spaz on it.
Well,
Now he's spazzing.
okay, and this is my favorite, David. I want you to respond after this one. Because you know what? It's still not bad enough because I'm starting to think maybe I shouldn't have voted for Trump last November. These tariffs are starting to get ridiculous. Now that you are affecting my retirement, I hope for your sake things get better quick. Oh, what are you gonna do, John? If things don't get better quick, what are you gonna do? You're gonna march up to the White House?
But,
I'm
but
starting
John,
to think that maybe I shouldn't have voted for Donald Trump. So he's being affected, and still he's starting to think. He's still on the fence.
It's going to be tough. I often feel though, who do you look for the future direction? Do you look for the people who enthusiastically voted for Trump 3 times, or do you look for the relatively small number of swing voters that gave him the election? Because we have polarization. We have 2 camps. We have people like me who would vote for a dead squirrel over Trump, and then we have people who are very believe in him and are very committed to him. And those 2 groups are fairly similar in size, and we have and they're very large, right? So we have this group of people in the middle, and they're the ones, you know, I think I can totally understand. My nephew is very close to this. I don't he I don't think he voted for Trump. We know he didn't. He voted for somebody else. He went outside. Um, but the thing is, he's a young person, and they had this kind of both sidism, right? They looked at Trump and they said, "All right, he grew up with it, so yeah, he's an idiot." But then Biden, the whole no election thing, shenanigans on that side. So what do you do? Well, we just want the guy who runs the economy the best, and the
But
economy.
that's
Well, but everyone was convinced that Trump was better at
yeah.
that. He was convinced. And also, who was running the economy before? It was Biden. And was the economy good? Ask Kamala, is the economy good today? She would have said, oh, it's horrible. Okay. Okay. You've stipulated that the economy is terrible. You and your boss were running the economy. Here's this other guy who has a reputation for running. I'm just saying that if you're not outraged by the shenanigans, right, or you have a both sidism view of it, when you get down to just, hey, running the economy, you know, you just don't have it's not that far to think, especially if you don't know why tariffs are so bad, if this has never come up before. And these are the people I think that have already gone. They're already ready to vote Democratic, right? I think he lost them a month or 2 ago, but let's drive that and let's bring more people out. And so when you look at the people who are Trump diehards, and you're still going to find a lot of people that are ride or die with him, um, and it's going to take a lot to convince them otherwise. But I think the balance of power has shifted, and we need to look at the people who, look at the town halls, look at all these things. I think these are indicators that people are the swing voters have abandoned him, and the midterms are going to be a bloodletting for the
Well, I mean,
Republicans.
swing voters have abandoned him, but it's not like he can run again. So what does that do?
Well, he might come, he's
You might try
violating everything
something.
else.
Yeah.
But I think what we need is the midterms where Congress can change and Congress can assert its authority vis-a-vis the president. I think that's it. The problem is that Democrats suck, right? And if that's not just me, that's public opinion. Democrats are not perceived very well. And so it's not enough to be anti-Trump. They have a long way to go. And so watching how they deal with things, because their approval rating is in the toilet, right? And so you need better Democratic leadership, or you need a new party or a new alignment to come
I
out
see.
of
I
this.
see two things, and I know Harold's going to respond. As soon as you said Democrats suck, his eyeball twitched. Um,
No, I don't worry about that part.
a lot of
But go
people
ahead.
feel that way. I see two things happening. Number one, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I'm not seeing and it's something that Harold mentioned a long time ago on the show. It mentions all the time. I see Democratic representatives, saying, pointing out the bad things that are happening, pointing out what Trump is doing, and they're sticking on Trump, and I'm not seeing them say anything worthwhile of them making it better or fixing it. That's one thing I'm seeing. I'm also seeing a select of people who are blaming the Democrats because they're like, he's in here because of you. You guys have been so bad. This is why we voted for Trump. I hate that sentiment because it makes no sense to me. It's like that thing, okay, so you hate Democrats, so you pick something worse. Doesn't make sense to me. But this is just what I see in comments and see videos of people making. I don't see what Democrats are doing right now positively. And that has nothing. And when I say that, Democratic people will go, but Trump, but Trump, but Trump. I'm not talking about Trump right now. I already know what I got with Trump. I'm talking about you. Okay. Sorry, just wanted to throw that in there. Go ahead, Harold.
No, I mean, what I want to allude to is, and actually I was going to help Dave finish his sentence. He said Democrats suck, and I was just going to say at messaging. Because what's happened over the last few years, and you probably say the last few decades, Democrats have allowed Republicans to tell everyone who the Democrats are instead of the Democrats telling people who they are. And that allows this opportunity to go into the culture wars and to all this other stuff that's irrelevant. When you're telling me that we're focused on quote unquote trans athletes, when I got more kids with measles in Texas than I do with trans athletes on the planet, we got a problem. I won't say planet, but in the United States. That means we got a priority problem. That means we got a messaging problem. I tell people, listen, I'm a progressive conservative. Now, you can say because of Democrat policies, I'm aligned more with them. Yes. But their messaging sucks. They don't know how to tell a good story of all of the progress that they've made, all the positive things that they've done, and keep it in the face of people, because that's all Republicans do. That's why they're always on the news, in front of someone's camera, speaking into somebody's microphone, telling all about, hey, the Democrats want to do this. They're never telling you what they're doing or what they're going to do. They're always telling you the Democrats want this or the Democrats believe that. And I find it interesting. Now, going back to some of even the policies when we're looking at what's happening now, I do recall during the first Trump administration, this whole thing with taxes. We were lowering taxes so that these major corporations could bring their money offshore back onshore. They were supposed to be bringing it back and infusing it into our what? Economy. It didn't happen. Nobody called it out. Nobody, made sure that he held their feet to the fire if that's what they were supposed to be doing. Now you're in here with a buzzsaw trying to cut everything so that you can clear enough space so you can pass another tax break, for the gillionaires, I might as well say, and we're not, because of the fact that we don't carry the same standard for each party. The American people don't hold Democrats to the same standard that they hold Republicans, and vice versa. This is why we are where we are. And this is what has allowed Trump to manipulate this whole thing, because he realizes the standard is something that he can sway, because all he has to do is make one crazy claim. And now everybody's flying around either trying to defend it or harnessed it to try to use it as, some level of energy against them. So I land my plane.
So there's a problem then, because when we look at funds that were raised over the last two elections, $2 billion Democratic Party, 2.3 Republican. But in 2024 election cycle, Democratic aligned entities outspent their Republican counterparts on digital platforms like Google and Meta. So they're spending the money to get out messages a lot more than Republicans, but you're saying the problem is the messages that are being sent because they're outspending
Suck.
Republicans. Huh?
Suck. They suck.
Yeah. And first of all, I do want to say Democrats as people don't. And in fact, I've always, even when I was a Republican, I always liked, because I always said, oh, they're nice people. They mean well. But when it comes to messaging, I think that's one. I think we can have a lot of other ways where politically, their approval rating is 23%, and congressional approval rating amongst young people is 23%. And it's lower than it was in 2017. So I think Carol's right. You got a messaging problem. You have a leadership problem.
Complacency problem, which I hope changes now.
Yeah. They have to figure out. I thought Kamala did. I liked how she ran her campaign. I thought she was doing well. She was put in an impossible position by how she was put in there. The thing is, though, Democrats don't naturally follow people, right? The party doesn't unite. It's always got that problem with leadership. And so it's hard to get a leader that you fall behind. And it's hard to get on one sheet about messaging. And so I don't know how they fix this, right? It's always a problem with them. There is David Hogg. I think it's David Hogg, right?
The young man from Stoneman Douglas.
Yeah, who's
Yeah.
he's
Activist.
leading an effort to primary people. He's leading an effort to throw over the old guard. We have at least 4 Democratic senators retiring. So there may be movement in the party that will make it a more effective thing. And I don't know. I don't pretend to know. I don't know how you herd cats, because this is your problem. Is you're at some level with a party that is built on diversity and inclusiveness. It's hard to get unity
Any,
on
any,
messaging and some things. It's a very dicey thing.
anytime complacency run amok, the way to combat that is it's always the youth movement. I said it with the presidencies when we got Clinton, Bush, whether you like them or not, Clinton, Bush, Obama. These guys were young, they were fresh, and we're back to old ideas and old thoughts. Here's the thing: you look at something like Target, who lost billions of dollars with the protests that happened lately.
Mm-hmm.
We're out of touch. One thing I related to the Democratic Party about older Democrats being out of touch. So how does Target fix the problem? They fly in Al Sharpton and do photo ops. People under 40 do not care one iota about Al Sharpton. So they thought that was going to be the remedy. And I'm looking at that and I look and I go, how out of touch is everyone? Where you think because you roll in Al Sharpton, that's going to solve the problem. And the reason why I brought that up is I'm looking at the Democratic Party. Younger Democrats, there's a big divide, and Harold, you tell me if I'm wrong. There's a giant divide between older Democrats and younger Democrats, especially in the African American community.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Because again, you have to be able to relate at the end of the day. And something's wrong when I find myself more relatable to, young people than some people their age. But my thing is I'm just an open mind, an open book, and tend to listen and pay strict attention to what message they're listening to and what they're trying to communicate. And a lot of our young people just simply want to make sure, hey, listen, whatever the Constitution affords them, they want to have access to it. Whatever the government has provided for its residents or is making available for its residents, they want it and they want it untouched. But also they want some level of new freedoms so that they can create and generate all of these potential new economies that exist through social media, through all of these other platforms. And I'm seeing a lot of ingenuity being applied by the younger generations so that they can find a niche, find a place where they can begin to establish themselves, but more importantly, create or carve out that thing that they feel is their purpose in life and would be able to provide them with some level of stability and resources. But what we have now, even in the party, when we go to the political side of it, a lot of our older people don't want to give up the reins. And I just had a conversation earlier today with a Democratic operative where I mentioned, hey, listen, we got some older people. I hated seeing Elijah Cummings die in office. I hated seeing, God, I'm drawing a blank now, Good Trouble, John Lewis die in office. You hate seeing these things because, again, everyone should have a place or a time when they could ride off into the sunset and enjoy the work that they've spent their entire lifetime devoted to and allow the reins to be turned over or groom someone to step in to that particular seat and carry on wherever the vision may have been or what needs to be carried on. But the challenge that we have now is, like I said, at one point, I think the average age of the Senate was like 60 plus. And the average age of the House was just under 60. Now it's changed within the last couple of elections, I'm sure. But, the point is when we're sitting here allowing these same individuals to now tell me you're going to move my retirement age up to 70, while first of all, they don't even contribute to Social Security, within their paycheck. So it doesn't matter to them. They are going to get their full check until they die. So maybe we need to advocate for those types of changes in Congress, and then we'll see who's really committed to doing the work of the people and for the people, rather than doing what's in the best interest of just themselves. And I'll end.
It is so crazy that I guess that now it's come to there's a list of the top 5 things that I'm grateful for that I did 20 years in the Army. There's a bunch of stuff that I can say, God, why did I do that? But the top 5 things, now the thing that has moved into the number 1 spot is I'm glad my retirement is because I retired from the military. I'm like, good Lord, I now understand how important it was to finish that 20 years and get my, hey, look, it's Greg, our stock guy. It's speak up. A lot of things going on in the economy. Keep an eye on the bond market. Okay. Yeah.
When stocks go down, bonds go up. So that's what they say.
The Bales bond market. Go ahead.
And it was when that didn't happen that people freaked out. That was the pause on the first tariffs when just one thing before we move too far away from what Harold was saying, that generational issue is huge. Boomers are reviled by a lot of people as kind of just it's at a joke level, right?
Yeah.
There's one guy that I've followed on TikTok. He calls himself Off Jawagon, and he has a show, and he's a farmer, and he's always there in his yellow, his high vis thing, walking around. Smart guy. I would love this kid. He'd hate me, but he's frequently deals with this theme of how boomers won't give up power, and how he's did a whole video where he said, let's look at when presidents were born, and it stopped, right? Like the date that presidents were born just kind of stopped a few presidents ago, and they keep getting older. And so he very much and it's that idea that boomers won't leave their house, they won't get out of the way. And that contributes to the both sidism, because the Democrats have as many old people, and we had that Dianne Feinstein was just a classic example of someone who was probably incompetent, And so when the Republicans have a congresswoman who is in a memory care facility, right, can't even
Mm-hmm.
vote anymore, that's not an own on them, because the Democrats are just as, you just look at them. And even Kamala, she looked young, but she was my age. She's a boomer. So I think that's an important issue for our political system in general. All right.
So is the
Sorry.
current president old? I'm
You
just
know,
curious.
you know, yes.
Well, they're all, I mean, their point is, it's that both sidism. Trump's old, but Biden was older,
Well,
right?
Put up three
Kamala's still
years.
a baby boomer,
one
you
of the
know.
things in the age divide is, we deal with it with Pope Francis. A lot of people, because you can't be progressive at all, right? You can't be progressive. You can't move along with society. You can't try to improve for everybody. There are people that can't get over the notion that things are changing. And one of the reactions of Trump being voted is too many things becoming normalized that weren't normalized, right? But that's always going to happen in history.
But what's interesting to me is we spend a lot of energy dealing with things that are less than 1% of the population.
Yeah,
Less than 1% of the population.
yeah.
But you would think it was rampant across our country. And how do you make that make sense? And no one has the, I guess, desire to just say, listen, this is BS. Y'all need to leave. This is only X number of people y'all are talking about,
Because
and you need to move on or get
it's
a life.
to be a part of the fear mongering tactic. I remember talking to people, when we go back to immigration, and they'll say, well, they're taking our jobs. I'm like, you're a doctor. There's no one crossing the border and just becoming the head surgeon at the hospital in 2 months. Like, what are you talking about? You're a cop. You're a fighter. You know what you have to go
Robocop.
to be a firefighter? What are you talking about? Like, what? The jobs that it's just and this happens every show, Dave. I'm sorry. I start to vent, and then my mouth starts to froth over, and I start to hyperventilate because I'm just like, what
Uh-oh.
the fuck are you talking about? That, you know what? I'm going to start a segment where I'm going to shut up, and then I'm just going to have my segment on this show. It's going to be called "What the fuck are you talking about?" That's what my segment's going to be. That's what I'm going to do, because it annoys me that when it's and the reason why I brought that up is when you said that, Harold, it's a part of the fear mongering. Let's find something that is not a majority that we can make everyone angry about while we do this messed up shit over here. That's always
Well,
been a
and that's a challenge. Yeah, we have it in our politics, but we have it in our churches, where we look at one type of sin or what we categorize as sin, or the Bible has outlined as sin, but then we ignore the million others. Yeah. And it's never to the benefit of anyone.
So we wail about things, and then we go into tariffs. And our commander in chief, I read it last show. The one thing he said is, "This is a time to be tough." He said, "Don't be a panicking." That's what he's telling his followers, Dave. Don't
That's a
be
new party.
panicking. How do you not panic when you're watching your account get drained in real time?
And I mean, the thing is, when you do something and it has exactly the predicted outcome, right? Like, take Pete Hegseth, right? You put that guy in the Pentagon and you're surprised that he's screwing up OPSEC. Actually, I'm a little surprised that someone who had been at least a captain doesn't understand that you don't do that. But you're surprised that he can't manage a large organization, right? No, you're surprised that the markets react negatively to you passing the largest imposing tariffs that were bigger than they expected, and that are bigger than the Smoot-Hawley tariff, right? I mean, these are predictable things. And so the point is, am I panicking when, you know, if I see a toddler pick up a sharp knife, is it panicking to rush to take it away from them because we know the predictable outcome from this? And so to make it out like it's mindless panic is, again, to treat us like we are the idiot that Trump is himself. I said it. You know, he says, "I know what I'm doing," and it's like, well, clearly you don't. I don't think you do. And this is something that serious observers are noting. He does not understand trade policy.
Well, I mean, when you continue to rail or express the fact that you love the uneducated, and then when you started talking about tariffs, you were telling people that Mexico is going to pay the tariff, which was going to build the fence or the wall or whatever we were trying to erect down on the border. And those people actually believed it. And you got millions of videos. Let me say thousands, at least thousands of videos where people are sitting there trying to defend Trump tariffs, saying that they're not going to have to pay for it. It's going to be the China paying for it or whomever. You know, he loves the uneducated for a reason. They're the most easily manipulated. And unfortunately, they won't go and do the research. They won't go and do necessary investigative, I guess you could say, direction that needs to take place to find out or unearth whatever the truth is and whatever he said. And this is why we are where we are, because they would rather believe what he say than realize they believe the lie and want to own it or own up to it.
And the lies keep coming. My TikTok feed is full of, I get a lot of people answer, but there are definitely on TikTok. It's interesting. I get things on my For You page I shouldn't get.
Uh-oh.
And they are things saying, "Oh, Ford just announced they're opening plants. Trump's tariffs are working." Right. And I see a lot of things that are obviously produced. They tend to be single shots with words over there. And these are produced by bots. These are not real people, and they are always wrong. They are always, if not out and out lying, they are grossly misrepresenting what's happening there. And now the comment section, you go in the comment section,
Oh man.
and it becomes obvious people aren't buying it, but it also becomes obvious that it has been targeted to other people who don't like Trump, right? Because when you see the number of comments, there's some things that you go in and you get a mix of people supporting Trump and not, but these things are just honest. So we've got this campaign going on to publish fake facts that, oh, the tariffs are working because companies are coming back. And that's problematic. Now, Greg also brings up groupthink. One of the big problems I have, again, this is a problem I do have with TikTok and these social medias, is that it is easy to talk yourself into, oh, everything's going so wrong that Trump is out, and to not see it from the point of view of these other folks. And because I think we have a big problem with echo chambers on social media, absolutely.
Almost
And
definitely.
yeah, but unfortunately, having these other points of view come out, that having people lie, actually contributes. When you tell me something and you give me a lie, it makes me this cognitive response theory. You think about it, and it's why Tokyo Rose and, like, in World War II, those propaganda folks on the other side didn't work, because they said things that were so absurd Americans laughed at them, and then they thought of all the reasons. So, like, uh you know uh like, "Oh, Joe, your girl is missing you, and you're out here fighting." And they're all like, "Yeah, right." you know, and then when you bring it up, they start convincing themselves of all the reasons that she's wrong. And
Mhm.
so if you don't present a convincing argument, you actually create attitude polarization. You get a boomerang effect. And so um, the question, though, is, do people believe it, right? Do people scrolling on TikTok say, "Oh, hey, look, Ford is maybe he's right. Maybe Ford is bringing a plant back"? They aren't. Uh, yeah.
I always love when I see someone's being disingenuous and Harold just whispers in the mic over and over again, "It's a lie. They're lying. It's a lie." He is not like when I say someone's being disingenuous. I try to think sometimes people are saying things because they're not educated on the issue or something, but then some people are just flat out lying, and then the lie just keeps going. Dave, we talked about earlier. Remember the comment that the Democrats have gave hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine? It's like every time they say this, that number it's going to be a trillion
Getting
soon.
bigger. My God, they would have won the war by now.
They gave them millions, then they gave them hundreds of millions, then they gave them billions, now hundreds of billions. Soon it's going to be, the Democrats gave them trillions of dollars. But that keeps rolling.
And we are bringing about the end of we're bringing about the remilitarization of Europe.
Mm.
And it just goes hand in hand with this. The
That's
Trump
right.
administration pressuring Ukraine to recognize the annexation of Crimea, to cede lands that are taken, is and even the news, even the people on the news commented, because Trump's like, it's up to Putin to accept these terms, and they noted that there was no demand, nothing that they were asking Putin to do, right? Everything was Ukraine would recognize this, that, and the other thing. There was no counter, like Russia needs to do this, right? It was all, I
Ukraine.
guess Russia's giving up its desire to take over the whole country, or some future gains. You're giving them no NATO membership, which is what they fought. You're giving them everything they wanted to fight the war over. And the Europeans noticed this, right? And then Trump says Zelensky has a choice of make peace now or go on and fight for 3 years and lose the whole country. And I could just see the Europeans going, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. We work very
Well,
hard.
we'll join in,
Yeah.
I mean, if it comes to that, they'll go. Before that, they'll decide that, they have so many steps they can go through. They have all these seized Russian assets that they could condemn and confiscate and give to Ukraine. And then they might have hundreds of billions of dollars.
It's crazy.
Because all that money they've just frozen. They're now spending the interest from the money they've frozen for Ukraine to fight the war. What if the Europeans decide, all right, that's it, we've had it, and they seize the money and give them the capital? That's what, a tenfold increase, and not to mention they can go and deploy their own troops and defend the country. And I think again that just shows the lack of understanding, the lack of world perspective for the Trump administration in terms of what the effect of the position is going to be on our allies and on the view of the United States, what the import is for rewarding aggression and violating all the principles of the UN and everything that has guided the post-World War II world, and for not recognizing that other people have power, other people have agency. And which, by the way, is exactly the comment that Zelensky made that pissed Trump off, in that, if you remember, he said, you'll someday find out that other people have influence over you. And that's when Trump said, you're not going to tell us how things are going to go. He flew off the handle on it. But that's exactly the point they're missing. Sorry. All right. Plane landed. Plane crashing, burning on the ground.
It's amazing when I look at the map on who voted for Trump, and I'm looking at the amount of the poorest states. It's not all the poorest states, but the poorest states were red. The states that had way more farming. You look at a place like South Dakota that was 70% voted for Trump. They're being hit the hardest. But the problem that we come back to is you were told. You were told. It's not
By
like
who? But they were also lied to.
They were also lied to too. Yes,
they were lied to. 2025, right? We told them. I mean, so everything you say, we told them. You can say, well, Project 2025. We told you, Project 2025, and one farmer actually responded to that. The guy who went on and complained about losing his farm. He when Trump froze money, right? And he said, I was told that I didn't pay attention to Project 2025 because they said it wasn't a thing. It had nothing to do with Trump. When in fact, Project 2025 is, talk about campaign promises being, the thing that they had nothing to do with has been implemented very meticulously and quickly. But it goes back to you were lied to, but by whom? Figuring out who was it that lied to you is tough for some people, I think.
Well, and again, I think we have people that, obviously a lot of people don't want to admit they were wrong. And the fact that Trump's name was mentioned over 300 times in Project 2025, but he had nothing to do with it. He had no knowledge of it. He went to several Heritage Foundation functions, breakfasts, and things of that nature, luncheons, and referenced Project 2025, but he had nothing to do with it, no knowledge of it. So people just chose to believe what they wanted to believe. One thing about farmers that they know inherently that if they get trounced, they're going to get bailed out by this administration. It's happened once. It's going to happen again and again and again.
It's
Because
not all. It's
so
not all.
it doesn't matter if you say the tariffs are going to hurt you. I know the government's going to come and bail me out.
The bigger ones.
I agree.
See, this is
And
why nobody likes you too. You come on here and you spit your stupid facts and all of your knowledge. It is just annoying to everyone. That's the problem. Next show, we're going to come on here and we're just going to say a bunch of opinions and things that don't matter. Agreed?
yeah, I can do that.
Can you do that, Dave?
It's hard, but I can do it.
I don't know. I don't what do I have opinions about? I don't know. I could talk about, I like this I like my little fish painting. Thank you, Leah.
Well, I
The
got
woman who
Daniel and the
did that
Lions Den
makes the
behind me,
best
so
cocktails.
You know what
Okay.
I missed? I missed the show when we first started, and Harold was in the room with the pink ballerinas.
hey, that's my daughter's room. Stop it.
I know, but I just missed that aesthetic. Yeah, this guy with the beard, looking like a lumberjack, like he's about to go chop down trees, and then you've got
I'm a lumberjack.
ballerinas.
We
Yeah,
don't have trees in Miami anymore. They took them all.
fake news.
Do you have anyone